Hello, everybody. Today I want to talk about the way that Malcolm Gladwell uses evidence in his novel, David and Goliath, in which he claims that the Davids of the world have more power than the Goliaths. So, let's dive into two of his sources that he uses into this book today. I do believe, however, that he uses his sources very cleverly and he is able to reinforce his argument by using these sources. The sources that he uses are done by well-known sociologists and other types of professors in colleges that are accredited and conduct these studies. So today we're going to be looking at two specific pieces of this evidence. The first piece of evidence that the first source he uses evidence to help his argument is a study done by Samuel Stauffer. And this study is about relative deprivation in the U.S. military between military police and the Army Air Corps during World War II. This piece of evidence comes in a chapter titled Caroline Sachs. It is chapter 3 of David and Goliath and starts on page 63 and ends on page 96. To summarize the chapter, a woman goes to a college after graduating from high school that is an Ivy League school and is very competitive. She's not the best of her class, which is something she's not used to coming from the school she did. So Malcolm Gladwell uses the source we are about to talk about to evaluate the difference it would have made had she gone to a smaller school, such as a state school, so on and so forth. So let's dive into this. So Samuel Stauffer was a researcher during World War II in the sociological area. And this study was, as I stated earlier, about Army Air Corps personnel and military police personnel. And the study conducted was to basically see who was satisfied with their job more. In doing this study, to quote about the study from Malcolm Gladwell on page 78, on the face of it, that made no sense. The military police had one of the worst rates of promotion of all the armed forces. The Air Corps had one of the best. The chance of an enlisted man rising to officer status in the Air Corps was twice that of a soldier in the military police. So why on earth would the military policemen be more satisfied? The answer, Stauffer famously explained, that military policemen compared themselves only to other military policemen. And if you got the promotion in the military police, that was such a rare event that you were happy. So by Gladwell using this study and this source conducted by Mr. Stauffer, Dr. Stauffer, maybe, he uses it to be able to relate to Caroline Sachs's, that is the girl, I don't remember if I said that, dilemma, where she's having with her college. Basically, his argument in this chapter boils down to, if she chose to be a big fish in a little pond, she wouldn't be struggling as a little fish in such a big pond as an Ivy school. So what we see by him using this evidence is it's very cleverly put, especially where it is used. More towards the end of the chapter, so after he's got done explaining issues that Caroline has been having and many other types of issues, the things that are making her wish that she had gone to a smaller college. It's very clever for him to put this where he does, especially with the way it relates to the main character of his chapter. She fits the bill of what Stauffer was conducting. Because she's in a much larger Ivy League school, and because there's so much other kids that are studying in her same field, she's dissatisfied with what's been going on. And his evidence here that about the Army soldiers is spot on, and it really does help push his argument about the little fish in a big pond being better at being a big fish in a little pond, saying that if she would have went to a state school, she could have succeeded and been much more satisfied with her college experience. So now let's take a look at the second source I'm going to choose. This source comes out of the next chapter, chapter 4, which is about a man named David Boys. Starts on page 99 and ends on page 124. This chapter, the person he is writing about has dyslexia. Malcolm Gladwell in this chapter claims that having dyslexia, although we as a society negatively associate it, is actually a very positive thing for somebody to have. The reason he says this is because having a harder challenge in front of you, having something hard, an obstacle to overcome, makes you train harder for it. So we see people with dyslexia as the underdogs in society. But in truth, he tries to argue that they are in fact the ones who have the ability to overcome the obstacle much better than normal people would, because they already have to fight every day to be able to read. So one of the studies that he uses to show this, and one of the sources that he uses, is a CRT test done by Shane Frederick. This test is for cognitive reflection and decision making. Here on screen I have I believe this is a PDF version of the study's findings. Yes, this is the study. So this is used to quite an effect in the book. To quote, "The CRT is really hard, but here's the strange thing. Do you know the easiest ways to raise people's scores on the test? Just make it a little bit harder. The psychologists Adam Alter, and Daniel Oppenheimer tried this a few years ago with a group of undergraduates at Princeton University. First, they gave the CRT the normal way, and the students averaged 1.9 correct answers out of 3. That's pretty good, though it is well short of the 2.18 that the MIT students averaged. The Alter and Oppenheimer printed out the test questions in a font that was really hard to read. A 10% gray, a 10-point italics. Myriad Pro fonts, so it looked like this. And it looks very, very, very hard to read. The average score this time around, 2.45. Suddenly, the students were doing much better than their counterparts at MIT. So what we can see, that quote comes from 104 and page 105. What we can see by the way Gladwell uses this source in his placement, discussing it in a chapter about people with dyslexia, it really does show how people with obstacles in front of them, people with a harder time, having an easier time, the MIT students had the test regularly. These other people did not. Because they had to work harder, basically to study for it or be able to read it, as it is very hard to read, they paid attention more to it. It's an obstacle. And so they overcame it, and eventually they were able to achieve a better score than the MIT. The same way that Malcolm Gladwell argues that somebody with dyslexia is able to overcome problems better than a normal person like you or me would. These sources very clearly help his argument. Malcolm Gladwell is very clever in the way he uses, in the way that he puts these sources in a very, very intelligent way in a place where it influences the reader to think the way that he's thinking. And so with that, I am going to draw an end to the video. So this is not going to be a normal video on my channel. This is for a school project. To anybody else watching, Shout out to the teacher, and have a good day, everybody.